welcome to the Daily Debate Live Thursdays with Taghreed Hussein here on Nile TV International. Tonight we'll be wrapping up more than one important story and taking Egypt's steadfast, important steps on the path of Egypt's chairmanship of the African Union. After the announcement of Egypt's chairmanship of the Union, the Egyptian government had announced the main axis of priority working accordingly for the African continent, including more than one axis, namely economic integration, continental integration, economic and social development, also institutional reform of the African Union, also cooperation with the international friends of the African continent, and above all, of course, peace and security of the continent. Egypt started working on those axes since the beginning of 2019 under the leadership of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, and exerted great efforts in that respect, and also in different aspects, namely also Egypt launching the campaign to detect and treat 1 million Africans of virus C, providing African countries with assistance and with experience in presenting projects connecting electricity grids, and also working hand in hand with many African countries was also important, following up on the presidency of the African Union and ensuring the continuity of the different projects. So we'll be recapping more about those important steps, milestones in the Egyptian chairmanship of the African Union. And I have all the honor and pleasure of having with us on the Daily Debate live tonight His Excellency Ambassador Dr. Amb Mohamed Hagazy, former assistant to the Foreign Minister. Thank you so much for coming, Ambassador.
My pleasure.
Together, we'll be reading the news headlines and taking to the top stories. The president received on Thursday Lebanon's Progressive Socialist Party, Walid Jumblat. Presidential spokesman Ambassador Bassam Radi said that the president hailed Egypt's strong and special relations with Lebanon, and also the historic ties between the people of the two brotherly countries. The president also stressed on Egypt's keenness on the security and stability of Lebanon, and praised Jumblat's role in preserving the stability and balance of the brotherly country. On his part, Jumblat expressed keenness on boosting historic and strong bilateral relations with Egypt, and his appreciation to the Egyptian efforts in supporting Lebanon and the pivotal role as a cornerstone of stability in the region. Ambassador, an important meeting with Mr. Walid Jumblat, and Egypt is always working on further strengthening ties with Lebanon.
Indeed, and I think it is a timely visit, seeking support of a country that is always or historically supporting Lebanon all over its history. And nowadays, as we all know, there is a lot of tension around Lebanon and surrounding its borders with Israel and Hezbollah. And for that, I think part of this very important visit is to seek support from President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and from Egypt to soften a bit the deteriorating security situation around their border, and of course the bilateral ties and the support we are giving to all the parties concerned in Lebanon. So I think this is a very important visit where Lebanon really needs the diplomatic support that a country like Egypt can give. Bilateral ties, as you have stated, is very important indeed, and I'm sure that part of that is related to the relation that historically exists with the National Progressive Party of Kamal Jumblat and Walid Jumblat, his son. And I'm sure that Walid Jumblat have brought all the concerns of the Lebanese people about the current situation surrounding Lebanon and Israeli-Hezbollah relations.
Yes, Egypt and Lebanon enjoy strategic ties, bilateral relations throughout history between both countries.
Indeed, indeed. I think since the inception of the independence of Lebanon, Egypt was always supportive to Lebanon security, cohesion and national unity. In addition to that, in the economic front, in all what is related related to infrastructure, electricity, and other activities. Lebanon was always considering Egypt one of the pillars of its regional and Arab relations.
Yes, and Egypt is always keen on the security and the stability of Lebanon, and this has been outlined by the president during the meeting. On the other side, Jumblat expressed keenness on boosting those historic and strong bilateral relations. This sense of coordination is very important, and it comes timely, as you've said.
As I said, Tagir, there is a security concern around Lebanon, and the deteriorated situation with Hezbollah and Israel requires all the parties concerned in Lebanon to exert efforts and to seek support from regional countries that enjoy credibility and respect in all domains. And Egypt, I think, have proven always to be a stabilizing factor and a support to Lebanon all over its history. And I'm sure that Egypt will try to listen a little bit the current tense situation and bring back peace and stability to the whole region. We don't need really to see an escalation where the Lebanese people and institution will pay the price of confrontation between Hezbollah once again and Israel.
Definitely, and from the Egyptian-Lebanese relations to Egypt's relations with the African continent and milestones throughout the start of 2019 and Egypt's chairmanship of the African Union.
Thank you, Tariq.
Yes.
Egypt was always supportive to its continent, no matter whether it is in the chairmanship. But during the chairmanship of the African Union 2019, we accelerated the efforts. But for 2 years, say, for example, 2016, 2018, Egypt was representing Africa in the Security Council, where all the African issues were transcended to the international community, were expressed clearly by the Egyptian vocal support to the African issues, being it political or economic. In the also environmental debate in Paris, Egypt also spoke on behalf of Africa in the UNCTAD or in the group of 77 and China. Yes. Egypt was always speaking on behalf of the third world in general, the non-aligned, and Africa. So the chairmanship brought Egypt to decide on many issues, and part of it was what you have stipulated in your intro, where all the activities that has been really with us has proven successful. And I may also add to what you have said, the very important and historical achievement we had in Niamey, in Niger, when we agreed on the FTA Africa, the free trade intercontinental trade agreement, where Africa has now representing itself as one of the most attractive free trade zone in the world. And I'm sure that Egypt will do its best to further enhance its trade ties with Africa using this very important platform. But when we talked about Egypt representing Africa, I think last week Egypt in the G7 or the UNCTAD, or in the TCAD 7, yes, has also carried with it all the hopes and challenges of the continent to the international arena, where the president has spoken clearly about the African economic situation and hardships that require support from international community and our partners. In all his bilateral meetings, beside his very important inaugural speech, has also raised the African issues, and he spoke about African women, he spoke about African youth, and he spoke about the injustice in the international economic front and the need to bridge the digital gap, as it is the key to progress, the key to sustainable development. He asked the international community and the mega players, the G7, to support Africa in reaching out with the international community in the digital divide. And I think this was a very important call. The president followed this very important participation in France in the G7, in Tokyo Development Action Plan, TCAD 7, and he represented Africa once again, and he called for an economic justice, a support to the African continent in order to confront the challenge of development. In order to confront terrorism and illegal immigration, you always need to enhance investments, to enhance opportunities to African youth in order not to fall into the trap of terrorism or not to seek another opportunity outside its country and moving into illegal immigration. So the two pillars that the president was always talked about in all his speeches or even bilateral talks is stability, peace and security, besides of course economic and investment opportunities. Above all, also the president has spoken about Egypt in all this very important visit, and raised the Egypt as an investment opportunity after a very serious, difficult but successful economic reform program.
Yes, a very important gesture also concerning the meetings that the president held on the sidelines of those important events, and meeting with leaders and seeing eye to eye vis-a-vis the sense of coordination, and also opening new doors for investment. Here, as a flashback in such important venues, the president was keen to present Africa's vision as a whole before the international community.
Yeah, indeed, Tagrid. The president always carries two important concerns. One about Africa and the second about Egypt. And he always represents Africa truly in a way that gain respect. And of course the international community also seek advice from a country that is keen to stabilize the region, to find solution to African crisis. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi is playing an important role also in the economic front, but also in the silence of the guns initiative of the African Union, where confronting challenges requires stability. And this stability will happen if we all pulled our hands together in finding solution to the current crisis. For that, he spoke in depth about Libya, and he referred clearly to the interventions of the regional powers that caused the matter in Libya to deteriorate and to continue unsolved up till now. And I'm sure that the international community have taken note. I think Ghassan Salama, the UN envoy, has clearly stated yesterday that the armed embargo to Libya was not respected during the last few months, and I'm sure he refers to what Turkey and a country like Qatar is doing in supporting armed militia against the Libyan army.
Yes, more about defending African causes and how Egypt prioritized the different axes, namely development and peace and security, as you've mentioned, Ambassador. What else concerning this important file? And also there is the sense of coordination vis-a-vis combating terrorism, which is very important.
Bilateral ties is important in the agenda of the president, but as you have said, Tagrid, the two pillars that has to be respected and to be shared with our international partners is the stabilizing the continent, solving the conflicts, which will help a great deal in raising the economic issues or challenges and confronting it in a way that we all looking for. So the two pillars that President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, or the two sides of the coin, is peace and stability and economic development. Both are interrelated, and of course if we are economically helping Africa, if we are helping Africa also in solving their problems in coordination with the African countries, not individually, or raising initiatives in the G7, for example, towards certain problems without consulting African countries, that will not lead to a proper solution. What President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi said is that we need to be consulted in relations to issues pertaining to the continent, and of course the economic and investment and trade with Africa requires justice and requires also to supply Africa with the digital divide.
We can see here, of course, on the sidelines of the G7, and with French President Francois Macron And also
Kagame.
Yes, and with the UN Secretary General.
Chancellor Merkel.
Yes, a very rich gathering, very important meetings.
This is, they call it, this is the most important meeting where all policies of peace and security, economic and strategic, financing and even security issues is raised. So it's important that Africa really link with such an important gathering.
Yeah.
And of course, raising our issues in such a platform helps our partners to directly support the continent. And this is what Egypt always working for.
The UN Secretary General met with the President on the sidelines, and as we saw how they were seeing eye to eye, and praised Egypt's efforts in fulfilling what he termed the African agenda, and also the keenness to support African causes in cooperation with the African Union. So this sense of cooperation between the United Nations and the AU.
Yes, Guterres is always praising the role of the African Union in solving African issues, and he's a great support to the continent. And I think we will have time this month, by the end of this month, on the 24th, upon the launching of the 74th session of the General Assembly, to raise more issues, Guterres and the international community in the General Assembly, where its agenda will focus on development, will focus, as you referred to, the 1 million African free of the virus C initiative. They will talk about the health campaign and national health insurance, and they will talk about, of course, the sustainable development in the most important meeting, which is the political debate in the General Assembly, I think on the 25th and 26th of this month. I'm sure that the President will participate, and he will definitely have time to speak to the 74th session as the sessions before. First, to explain Egypt success story and Africa facing many challenges. This is
with the leaders
and their
photo setup
with African leaders. This interaction is important.
And with President Trump.
And with President Trump, this is a recognition of the importance of stabilizing Africa, working hand in hand.
Yes, very important to work hand in hand, and this sense of reflection and seeing eye to eye and meeting face to face definitely reflects positively on bilateral cooperation and the sense of coordination in the future.
As Shinzo Abe, the Prime Minister of Japan, was here, he and President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi co-hosted that.
And our strong relations, of course, with Germany.
Yes. Chancellor Merkel is a strategic partner to Egypt, and I'm sure her statement that the success of Egypt is success
this is the meeting
Europe,
where U.S. President Trump had saluted the President and said that through his wise leadership, a lot has been achieved in Egypt.
Very important statement indeed, and I hope that through this mutual respect, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi will bring to the attention of the American administration the importance of respecting the pillars of solving the Palestinian cause. And I'm sure this is always our case in regards to all the bilateral debates or bilateral talks we have either with President Trump or other leaders, because this is a very important forum where you can exchange all what is related to you, to your country, or to your region, Palestine in particular, Iraq, Syria, Yemen, and Libya, Sudan. I think this is very important files to be debated with President Trump, and I'm sure that the bilateral ties, the strategic relations with the United States always on top of the agenda. But in the year of the Egyptian presidency to the African Union, Africa is always present in all our bilateral talks.
Definitely, Africa is always present in all our bilateral talks. And talking more about Egypt's support to the Palestinian cause and also to the Libyan side and all our efforts in that respect is very important in achieving Arab unity. Let's have a short break and we'll be back.
Understood each other very well. He's a very tough man, I will tell you that, but he's also a good man, and he's done a fantastic job in Egypt. Not easy. In the meantime, Egypt has made tremendous progress under a great leader's leadership. That's what it's all about, and your staff also have gotten to know fantastic people. So I want to thank you and I want to congratulate you.
شراكتنا في إطار التيكاد حققت قدرا كبيرا من الإنجازات وتفاعلت بالإيجاب مع المعطيات الدولية والإقليمية. نجتمع تحت شعار النهوض بتنمية إفريقيا عبر الشعوب والتكنولوجيا والابتكار. لأنني أتوجه باسم إفريقيا بدعوة لمؤسسات القطاع الخاص العالمية والشركات الدولية متعددة الجنسيات للاستثمار في قارتنا. فأسواق إفريقيا مفتوحة والظروف الاستثمارية مهيئة وأيادينا ممدودة للتعاون وأراضينا غنية بالفرص والثروات وعزمنا على بناء مستقبل قارتنا في شتى المجالات لا يلين. وأطالب مؤسسات التمويل الدولية والقارية والإقليمية بأن تطلع بدورها في تمويل التنمية بإفريقيا وتوفير الضمانات المالية لبناء قدرات القارة بما يسهم في تعزيز التجارة وزيادة الاستثمار.
So a very important roundup, and this takes us also from the G7 and those important meetings and the series also of meeting with leaders to the TCAT 7, which is also a very important opportunity for talking Africa's development, sustainability, and doing business as well.
Indeed, it is development and doing business. I think Africa was present in the G7 on the security and developmental level, but in TCAT 7 it is about development, about supporting African economy, about inviting all the stakeholders in relations to development, economic, finance, trade, education, health, maybe climate change as well,
yes.
all empowering women, youth, all those debates were in the TCAT 7. The President have given a very important speech where he spoke about African development, challenges that are facing the continent. Of course, security issues also is very important from a developmental dimension, and I think the Japanese government has proven once again that they are very important partner, a strategic partner indeed to Africa, one of the oldest who have expressed their support to Africa and in kind, and they are really and truly very supportive in many domains, say in Egypt, for example, in education, in culture, in the economic
yes,
drive,
in soft power.
in soft power. Japan is always available to lend Africa all what it has, and I'm sure that the inauguration of the Grand Egyptian Museum, which is a landmark of the mutual cooperation between the two countries, is another proof of what really we can gain from a strong Egyptian-Japanese relationship that is due back to centuries ago. And I'm sure that Africa also can count on Japan as a very reliable partner. They have gathered like 4,800 stakeholders, being it financial institutions, business leaders, and they have brought to Africa all whom they are concerned about development. And I'm sure that Japan can really deliver in all its promises to the continent.
Yes, also when we talk Japan, we remember the very successful experience regarding education and higher education, like the Japanese schools, that has been also very successful.
I'm sure that Japan is capable of lending its expertise in education to Egypt and to other African countries, and time has come to a country or a civilization like this of Japan to come out of its border and to showcase worldwide. And I'm sure that education out of Japan with the Japanese university, with Japanese school is very important. Same like in Germany. I was always saying while I was ambassador to Germany that German education, which is due back to the early last century in Egypt, is proven to be a success story, and we need also to see the Chinese also moving towards the same. Education is key to Egypt's success and key to Africa development. So those countries where they have achieved a lot in terms of education, technology, advancements, are really called to support Africa, because when you educate people, you can take them to a different level. It is not about technical assistance, it is about building their skills and capacities.
Yes, there is also a continued sense of coordination with Africa, and even after His Excellency returned from the tour, and he received a verbal message from the Guinean president, and they coordinated together regarding African issues and also fighting terrorism. So this sense of coordination with African leaders is very important.
Guinea in particular has a history to tell about the relations between Egypt and West Africa. This very important nation has gained independence in 1958, where the late President Gamal Abdel Nasser have supported their independence. It was very difficult because Guinea was the early African nations who voted against the French occupation. So France punished Guinea to compensate their independence. But President Nasser stood firm with his brother at that time, Ahmed Sekitori, and they moved together Guinea towards full independence. And this relations brought the President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi to Guinea last April, when he visited Cote d'Ivoire, if you may recall, Senegal, and of course Guinea.
Yes.
And
they were signing more than one memoranda of understanding in different fields.
I remember he inaugurated in the first university of Conakry, Gamal Abdel Nasser University, a statue for President Nasser.
Yes.
And that is unearthing, actually, our very important history with West Africa, but with Africa in general. But Guinea in particular have a very special place in our heart following the independence of the African nations and our fight against really colonialism. And if you may recall, in 5th Ahmed Hishmat Street in Zamalek, all the leaders and all the freedom fighters were visiting this place and taking it as their premises or their embassy till independence.
Yes, very remarkable presentation, and more also concerning Egypt's sense of coordination. When the president was on his way back, he visited Kuwait, and that was also very remarkable, a very remarkable sense of coordination.
Again, the Kuwaiti leadership has proven always to be a very wise leadership. It's a window where all the Gulf diplomacy can play a role. Kuwait have carried this responsibility in trying to solve the Qatari crisis, the Iranian escalation of tension in the Gulf. And I'm sure that Kuwait has played this very important role to the benefit of the stability of the Gulf region. But the president was very clear to support not only the Kuwaiti people against terrorism in his declarations, but also to support the Gulf security in general, when he stated once again and reiterated his known position that the Gulf security is an integral part of the Egyptian security. And this is very important. Egypt, Tahrir and Kuwait enjoys really historical ties. Egypt defended Kuwait during Abdul Karim Qasim in the 60s when they threatened the border of Kuwait. And of course, it is known the role of the leadership and the government and the people of Egypt to support Kuwait after the dilemma of the invasion of its territory by Saddam Hussein. At that time, the Egyptian people, before their government, has stood firm to support and host the Kuwaiti people. In Kuwait, there is 1.5 million Egyptians live there. And
a very important visit by the president to Kuwait, yes.
So when I said 1.5 million Egyptians lives in Kuwait, it means that Kuwait has also this depth in wisdom, because the Egyptian community in Kuwait is the custodian of the language, of the culture, of the religion. Some parts of the Arab world you may see less inclinations toward our culture and language.
This
but
is
in
a
Kuwait,
sense of coordination and brotherly and fraternal relations between Egypt and Kuwait.
Yes, of course, and that has really sent a very comfortable message to the Gulf in a time where a lot of interventions and foreign interventions that causes really wars in the Gulf region. And I'm sure that the presence of Egypt among this very tense situation in Kuwait sends a message that we are very close and we are keen to find an Arab solution.
Yes.
Remember, in the Iraqi-Kuwaiti crisis, if we in the Arab countries have managed to find a way forward or a solution to the crisis, we could have avoided
evaded
many
challenges.
and interventions of 33 foreign countries at that time in Kuwait.
Yeah, very fruitful meeting in Kuwait, and Egypt is always close to the Arab brothers, and even in our soft power and songs, Angham herself portrayed this by saying Masr قريبة, Egypt is always close. Let's watch.
لدينا مصير مشترك. مصر تسلمت الرئاسة الدورية للاتحاد الإفريقي لعام 2019 وتتطلع كعادتها دوما للتعبير عن شواغل الشعوب الإفريقية الشقيقة الرامية لتحقيق الاستقرار والتقدم ودفع عجلة التنمية قدما. إذا كنتم ترغبون في تغيير وجه القارة الأفريقية، فالاتحاد الإفريقي كقيادة تستطيع أن تعمل وتدرس بشكل مركزي لمشروع عملاق لبناء بنية أساسية على مستوى القارة. أنا أتصور أن الأمن والاستقرار استثمار. إذا لم تستقر هذه القارة والأمن فيها بمعدلاته عالية، هذا الأمر سينعكس بالسلب علينا كلنا.
مسير الغايب يعود وتلمس ايده الحيط، مصر قريبة وأوان يدوب جواها الغريب، ما بالك وانت القريب أخويا وصاحبي. وانت ماشي
Well, welcome back. Egypt really attaches great importance to the efforts of peace and security in Africa, as we've mentioned, and those sense of important bilateral meetings and cooperation is very important. Let's watch part of His Excellency's activities and his vision portraying African interests and African causes in this report.
President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi received a verbal message from Guinean President Alpha Condé on bilateral relations, coordination on African issues, and efforts to fight terrorism. The message was conveyed to President el-Sisi during a meeting with Guinean Foreign Minister Mamadi Touré. Presidential spokesman Bassam Rodi said that President el-Sisi conveyed his greetings to President Condé, hailing the progress in the two countries' relations after President el-Sisi's visit to Conakry in April. President el-Sisi hailed the convocation of the 6th session of the Joint Egyptian-Guinean Committee from September 1 to the 3rd in Cairo, and the signing of a number of agreements in the fields of electricity, water resources, maritime transport, environment, and antiquities. The president said that Egypt attaches great importance to efforts aiming at maintaining security, peace, and stability in the African continent. The meeting also took up Egypt's main priorities for the sustainable development goals in Africa under President Sisi's current chairmanship of the African Union, especially those set in the AU Agenda 2063 and the Programme for Infrastructure Development in Africa. During the meeting with the Guinean Foreign Minister, the head of state said that these goals were floated during the sessions of the last G20 and the TICAD summits in Japan and the G7 summit in France. They also reviewed the latest developments at the African level. For his part, he recommended Egypt's support to his country in the fields of capacity building and knowledge transfer, voicing his satisfaction about the convocation of the 6th session of the Joint Egyptian-Guinean Committee from September 1st to the September 3rd in Cairo, which testifies to both countries' willingness to push cooperation forward at various levels.
إن إفريقيا ثارت وإفريقيا تحررت، إفريقيا ناضلت وإفريقيا ضحت، إفريقيا اليوم نتيجة للثورة ونتيجة للنضال ونتيجة للتضحية مستقلة. إفريقيا الآن تستقل.
من أقصى الشرق إلى أقصى الغرب، ومن أقصى الشمال إلى أقصى الجنوب.
وملحمة مشرفة من النضال المشترك دشنها الآباء المؤسسون عبد الناصر ونكرومة وسيكوتوري وبنبلة وهايلة سلاسي وبودوبوكيتا وصولا لمانديلا. فانتماء مصر لأفريقيا ليس فقط لاعتبارات التاريخ والجغرافيا.
Yes, Egypt will always be the heart of Africa. Egypt belongs to Africa, as the president said. The sense of summit diplomacy has been very important. This sense of activity and this sense of coordination among leaders, meetings, very rich meetings, definitely in the interests of the whole continent.
Of course, summit diplomacy, as you said, Taghreed, is always very important. This is a continent of elderly people. This is the continent of the chief. This is the continent of wisdom. So the summit diplomacy is always very important as it reach out to the others and to make, I think, all our issues and problems and challenges met with the required decision And I'm sure President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has proven since he assumed power in 2014 that he's fidel, is very sincere in his drive towards Africa. And the whole country now is moving in the media, in the economy, in the political, in the military, in the security towards Africa. And this is actually what a country like Egypt has to do. It has to move in all fronts to support Africa, not, as I said, because of the presidency of the African Union 2019, but because, as the President said, not only because of history and because of geography, I think it is because of the belief in
the
Africa,
belonging.
the belonging, and in the trust in a future to come, where this continent will take its rightful role in the world community. We have to push towards more partnership with different initiatives, being it the Chinese, the Indian, the Western, different initiative, and we have to seek partnership that will help the continent through its economic challenges as well as its security challenges. Egypt is part of this African drive, and I think is a very sincere driver indeed to take Africa to the right shore.
Yes, and from Africa and talking Africa, also a sense of coordination with world leaders. We've seen on the sidelines with President Trump, also a sense of coordination with Russia, with President Putin, and more to come.
Of course, next month in October, President Putin invited President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi to lead together the first Russian-African summit. As you see, there is too many initiatives towards the continent, and we always talk about the importance of partnership in coordination with African views. Not to lead and to take decisions in African issues without really consulting Africa. And as I said, Africa is always in need to any support from all partners. We don't have a preference. We have a partnership with Japan, with China, with India, with the United States, with Europe, and we are open to all who are lending support to African development. And I think Russia has always been a great friend to Africa and a support to African development, and I'm sure that the outcome of the Africa-Russian summit will be very successful. But again, in the UN General Assembly 74th meetings, there is an opportunity to talk more about African challenges and opportunities, to talk more to world leaders, where 192 leaders will be present in this very important assembly. This is what they call it, the General Assembly of the world community, where we can talk about our hopes and dreams, our challenges, and talk to world leaders about partnership. And I'm sure the speech of the President will come to encompass and to complete the picture and talk about Africa hopes, Africa achievement, Africa challenges, and the long way Egypt also has carried through during the few years, or the year even, since the 73rd session to the 74th session. Egyptian economy has proven to be a success story, and I'm sure will bring this success story to the world platform, and we'll talk again about the challenge of terrorism and the challenge of illegal immigration, and how important that we have all together work against terrorism, and countries that are supporting and financing and logistically transporting the elements that is part of this phenomena. But he will put a stress on the economic development and the sustainable development, as it is thematic, one of the 5 pillars of the 74th session of the General Assembly.
Very important upcoming meeting, and definitely it's also going to yield its fruits, and we'll be talking more about results. I thank you very much, Excellency Ambassador Dr. Mohamed Hagazy, former Assistant to the Foreign Minister, for bringing this valuable information on the debate tonight. Thank you so much for coming.
My pleasure, Tari. Thank you very much.
And I thank you, dear viewers, for joining us. We discussed more about Egypt's chairmanship of the African Union and milestones in the Egyptian leadership towards belonging to Africa. I'm Taghreed Hussein. Many thanks for watching.